Hello, FewCandy here, and welcome back to planetzoo. And we are here with some very wavy grass, just checking out this misbehaving penguin. I have absolutely not the foggiest clue how they are escaping from this habitat and how they're ended up on this massive grass hill as well. When we go in and we check, actually, before we do that, let's of course emergency capture this animal. We've got tons of money, so we can do that. We'll get it moved back into the habitat ASAP. But if I just click on a penguin here, let's go to our heat maps and to our habitat. There is nowhere for them to escape from. It's so frustrating. I have heard of other people with these same problems with penguins, so yeah, I think it's a bug of the game. Now, one thing I actually realised after I completed the episode that I completely forgot was water treatment. This water started getting dirty. So I have now just added one in our very, very heavily makeshift staff area over here. So, yeah, they've got some nice clean water now. And actually, when we go to the heat map on that as well, let's just take a little look at water. It covers a pretty decent area because we are going to be doing something with water in this space today, which I will come on to in a bit. But first up, let's have a little look at the names. I'm going to pause it because we have got some issues, which I'm going to come on to as well. Oh, we've even got protesters now. But before we do that, let's just take a look at the names for our penguins. So I'm just going to come into our animal tab here and we'll filter to African penguins. And you guys have come up with some absolutely wonderful names. Absolutely love them. So let's run through what we've done. So first up, we do have a Skipper, Rico, Kalowski and Private, the Madagascar penguins, and that was an idea from Malay. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much for those suggestions. We've got Penny the penguin from DK. We've got Pingu, again, childhood favourite programme of mine actually, from Currently Heather, so thank you so much for that suggestion. I've also added in Pingu's mum and Pingu's dad because we needed some other names in here as well, so we've got them too. And they are actually Pingu's mum and dad, by the way, like genetically speaking. We've got McSwimface from Tarmahost, thank you so much. We've got Happy Feet from Johan Kruger. And finally, I think I've just rounded off with Peter and Piper. I don't know. I'm not very good at coming up with names. But we needed a couple more names, so that is what we have got for our penguins. Now let's go on to this problem that you can see in our notifications here. We have got dangerous fighting due to overcrowding in our Nile monitor habitat. So let's just go down here. We'll have a little look out for where our protesters are. Can't actually see any. There must be some with pickables somewhere. We've got some in the zoo. Yeah, Nile monitors have attracted protesters, so they're here somewhere, or they're coming. Oh, here they go. Here we go. Here they are, entering the zoo. Whatever that means. I'm not too sure. Yeah, we're not looking up giraffes yet. It's okay. But they're coming in because, yeah, we've got major overcrowding. All of our Nile monitors have grown up, so let's pause before they get any angrier. So, yeah, what we have got here is an absolute ton of Nile monitors. Now, the trouble with this is we need to be really careful about inbreeding when we're selecting animals. So we could keep animals from this, but unfortunately, even though we've had 2 mothers and 2 sets of births, so we've got some that are 4.7 years and some that are 4.2, they are all siblings. So if I click on E. Eddard, he has got 12 siblings. So unfortunately, none of our junior males or females can actually mate with each other in this zoo without inbreeding, which is going to lower their stats and make them not as good. And ultimately what we want to do is we want to see these animals getting up to gold ratings. So you can see we started with 2 without actually any kind of rosette or whatever to them, 1 silver male, and that's produced lots of bronze and silver babies. So we're working our way up. So what I'm thinking for this is we want to keep 2 silver females if we can, or at least 1 silver male. So I'm actually going to go into animal trading. Let's search for Nile monitors. And we're going to bring in some new animals into the zoo. Now looking at these, we want to try and find our best spec animals. So it looks like the male actually here for 25. We do have 25, so we could afford him. Is going to be the best. He's 8 years old, and I'm pretty sure if we go to Zoopedia, that gives us enough time. Yeah, 15 years is the age of sexual sterility, so we're all good there. So let's actually get back here. We'll adopt him. We'll actually send him to the zoo straight into here. Now, one thing actually I have not mentioned is if your animals have a disease, they will go into your zoo and then could spread it around. So in order to avoid that, you should probably, best practice, send them to the quarantine first. So that's just when you've got an animal in your storage like this. So let's take for here, cancel the move, do send to zoo, and we'll actually do it properly. We'll send him to the quarantine like this. And then from the quarantine, we can then move him out once he's passed his quarantine into the main animal habitat. And that'll just avoid any diseases spreading around. I'm a little bit lazy and tend not to do it, to be honest, because I don't mind having to research diseases and things going wrong like that. So kind of keeps up an element of the game, I think. But that is probably the best practice way of doing it. So we're keeping Fakir as our male. So now what we want to do is select 2 of our best females. So actually, let's just rank them on appeal. We obviously can't keep the 2 highest females, which actually are some of the highest spec there, which is slightly annoying because they are a little bit old now. So what we will do is keep D and Queen Elizabeth. I love that. And they can be our 2 females to mate with our new Fakir. So actually, instead of selecting those, I've done that wrong. Let's keep Fakir and we'll keep D and Queen Elizabeth. And then everyone else, we can either, we've got a few options here. We can either release to the wild. And doing that, you will get conservation credits for it. So you see, we're getting a really nice boost in conservation credits from doing this as well. You can press cancel there. Or the other option is you can either quick trade them for cash, which I wouldn't recommend. I've got tons and we really need conservation credits. Or the other option, of course, is you can send them to the trade centre and trade them. If you're on franchise mode with other people against the world, you can choose how many conservation credits you want to sell them for. For me, I'm just going to release them to the wild because I'm not technically playing on franchise mode. So by doing this, you know, we're going to get 348 conservation credits guaranteed. Because of course, if you trade on the market, it's not guaranteed someone is going to buy your animal. So let's do this and we'll release them to the wild. Okay, so now Fakir is properly in quarantine. So let's go to him and we'll select move. And then we'll move him into the zoo. So hopefully he should be, under quarantine. So once he's done with his quarantine, he'll be moving into the zoo there. Then we'll just have our 3, and a quarantine pass ready to leave. There we go. So he should be coming out now and getting back into our zoo. We should be moving from there, and one of the caretakers or one of the vets will transport him. And then we'll have our 3 Nile monitors ready to go, ready to produce more babies. So we'll take off the contraceptives from these 2 as well and see how it goes. In fact, maybe let's leave it on Queen Elizabeth for the moment and maybe just have babies from D so we don't get so much overcrowding in here. In fact, just looking at their specs, we just compare them. Even though she's higher rated, I think Queen Elizabeth might be a better overall because she's got size is green, immunity is quite a lot better, and longevity actually is better. So I think let's go for Queen Elizabeth as our fertile dial monitor female. So let's see how that goes. Let's change him back to, we'll call him Nile Rogers. Again, just so we keep up our nice names there. And we've had another penguin escape. McSwimface is out, so let's emergency capture that. I'll have to figure out and see if there is a little fix for that bug, or try and just watch them for a bit and spot how or where they're getting out, see if we can fix it a little bit. I would add with the lemurs as well, I have had issues with escaping, but I have very slightly adjusted these climbing frames away from the wall and it appears to have stopped it for the moment. I'll hold my breath. Like, they just seem to walk through walls, which is issues I've had with lemurs before, and it's just when you put climbing apparatus very slightly into a wall or too close to a wall, they don't like it. So here it's okay because it's far enough away, but this side, they just end up like sitting outside the wall and magically jump through it, which is really, really annoying indeed. So let's just see if that has indeed fixed it, but I haven't had any escapes since I've done that, so hopefully that will be the case. Okay, so coming on to the gameplay focus I want to talk about today before we get on to building our next habitat, and that is education talk points. So what I would like to do is add a talk point for the penguins on this platform right here. So if we come into the facilities menu under media devices and education, you will see there is an animal talk point. So let's go ahead and add this in, and it snaps nicely to the edges of paths, or of course you can put it anywhere else if you want to, but what I would really like is this right in the middle here. And alongside this we'll also need to hire an educator for our zoo. So let's come into the zoo menu, into staff, and we will go to educator and hire one and put one right here. So on our animal talk point, we've got no species selected. So what we do want to come in here and select is African penguin. We could choose another animal, but the guests are not going to be happy about it. You also then have the option to choose talk month. So if we have multiple of these across the zoo, we want to make sure that these are nicely spaced out to allow our staff to have a break in the staff room in between, but also allow them enough time to walk between the talk points in order to get there on time. There are a few other options here as well. You'll see there is a link seating option here. So if you come back into facilities, there is an animal talk seating point like this that you can also add. Now, I don't think I necessarily want to add this into the penguin habitat, but we could, because I think those at the top are going to struggle to really see anything, because the penguins ultimately are down on the floor right here, or well, they are swimming actually, I suppose. We could do it, but what you would do if you wanted to do that, and we will do this in other places around the zoo too, is you'll just place that in, like so, and then come into here and click link seating and just confirm this one. And then that is linked. You can also allow standing guests if you want. If you want to have people sitting and standing all around your talk point, then you can do that. But for now, I'm going to turn on standing again, and we're actually going to delete out the seating element because I don't really want that for here. And now this one says no habitat to throw food into. Now, I'm not entirely sure why that is, because I should be able to throw food into here. I'm wondering if it is because the land here is not really wide enough across this section. That could be why. But if you place a talk point, so let's go to the black-tailed prairie dogs, just by way of example. And let's place a talk point in here. Okay, we can put it in there. And then we select black-tailed prairie dog. It says can throw food. So if you have one of these that's not got a barrier in between it and is open to the habitat, the educator can throw food in, and that sort of helps to boost the entertainment of the guests because they're going to see the animals eating this extra piece of food. But I'm actually not going to have one at the black-tailed prairie dogs, I don't think, because there's not a huge amount of room on this walkway, and we will get a crowd of people gathering around here to watch. So the other habitat that I am going to add it into is actually the lemurs. So we've got tons of space in this walkway around here, so I'm thinking around this side would be a nice little spot for it, because guests aren't really gathering around here either at the moment. So let's put it right in the middle of this viewing area here. Again, we'll come in and we'll just select black and white rough lemur. And we can't throw food, obviously, because there is a big barrier in between. But also on this, just to note, you can check the scenery rating. So as long as you've got like detailing and rocks and foliage and building elements and things like that around it, the scenery rating will be higher. And that will keep guests more entertained. You can also add music to this as well. So you can add your own music if you want to. I think we'll add some, African music to this. Maybe Kenyan Montane? Why not? Okay, now let's just also manage this, because I do know that our penguin talk was also in March, so we don't want that. So this is not too far apart, so I'm thinking we probably only need a month for them to walk, but let's actually make it. So we've got penguins in March, let's give it April, May, and then we'll put this one in June. And then following June, they can head round to the staff room, rest, and then be back here for March. So that should work nicely, but you do just need to keep a little eye on it. So if we come into here, into the education tab as well, we now have animal talks, so we can see what those are. I'm going to name them for ease. And you can shut them again if you want to or not. But also alongside this, I'm going to create a little staff work zones. So in that, we're going to select the staff room over here because that's going to be quicker for them to access than the big one over there. Select this talk point and this talk point. We'll rename it to education entrance just so we know exactly what it is. And then we'll click exit on there. We'll go into our staff and let's find our educator now, which is Edmund Hermond. And we will assign them to the education entrance zone. So now we have got 5 different work zones all set up. I did add one for the African penguins I'd add as well, just to make sure that that is nice and consistent with the other areas that we have got. Okay, so just checking our other warnings that we do have here as well. We've got vet and mechanic research complete. I need to keep my eyes on that. But we've also got this warning. Many guests think tickets are underpriced. Now we've got so many animals in our zoo now, with babies as well. We could definitely ramp this up. So I'm actually going to put this up to 12 and 12 for now and see how we go and hope that that goes away. If we actually head over to the entrance, what we can do is wait for someone to come through with the new price and then see if they have a thought on it. Zoo tickets are still underpriced, apparently. Still underpriced? Okay, well, we'll put it up further. So let's actually go up to 15, see how far we can push this, because I haven't raised this for quite some time now. So this lady's just walked through. Zoo ticket price is great. You happy now? Zoo ticket price is great. Zoo ticket price is great. Okay, so we should be absolutely fine. We've still got the warning there, but we should be good on that. Now the other thing to check in is in animal tabs as well. Let's go to food, because with our African penguins, I have done all of the research for them now, but I've not upgraded that. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can really see here as well, the lemurs also don't have level 3. You can see the difference in price between the food. So you would not want to start your zoo with a black and white rough lemur, because that is so expensive. So you can see NAR monitors here on level 3. Their food is so cheap. This is a great animal to start with. Likewise, the prairie dogs as well. Now the next animal we're going to be putting in is definitely not cheap. And you did see a little spoiler of it earlier. But the plan now is to create a mandrill habitat over here. So I will just flash up on screen my zoo plan very quickly so you can see that. Yeah, you can see we've got mandrills sitting in there right before we're going to start putting in a huge lake with some really beautiful natural detailing around it. And opposite that, next to the African penguins as well, we'll be building out that staff area with guest facilities and toilets as well. You can see that marked on my very rough little map plan there. So let's go into Zoopedia to start off with, and we'll have a little look at the mandrills. So here we go. They are a vulnerable species as well, which is going to add to the kind of appeal of our zoo and how much guests want to come here. Because anything that's highly endangered or even extinct in the world in particular will be very attractive for guests to see. It's less so than some of the more common species for sure. So we're starting to get more towards that endangered end with this animal here. So they live in the rainforests and plateaus of Cameroon, Gabon and Guinea and Congo in Africa. So they're very much rainforest style animals. So that's really what I want our habitat to look like today. We're going to natural habitat. Yeah, they're very tropical region of Africa, and their temperature requirements are pretty wide. So they will sit really nicely in amongst our 26-degree temperate climate there. And grade 2 climb proof more than 3 meters, so they're going to need a really tall barrier, unless we opt for the second option, which is a water barrier, which is more than 3 meters wide and 1 meter deep. So that is going to be what we're going to do today, so something a little bit different to what we have done previously. So I'll be talking through that when we come to build the habitat in just a second. Now in terms of species data, we can have quite large groups for this. So we could have a male bachelor group or a female bachelor group if we wanted to, but we will obviously go for the mating option, try and get our conservation credits up a little bit. So we'll be having 1 male and up to 9 females. They live to 32 years old. Age of sexual sterility is 30 years. So when we're buying animals, we're really looking for someone that's probably as young as possible, close-ish to 7 years. Now the important thing here as well is this is not a great animal for mating. They only have 1 offspring per mating event. It's very easy to get them pregnant, but then it's 2 years before they can get pregnant again. So we'll be relatively slow from that point of view. We go back to natural habitat, and let's say we do have the maximum adult count, which is 10. And let's say we've got 6 babies in there. We're going to need 496 metres of land requirement and 136 of climbing. So it's really not a very big habitat at all, but they need a lot of climbing apparatus. I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger than this, only to get the overall effect that I want, because I'm going to be putting in an awful lot of trees and rocks and really trying to get that kind of overgrown natural rainforest look to this. So that's going to be the aim for today. Now in animal trading, I have already actually gone through and got ourselves some animals, because I've just waited very patiently for the animal market to update to get ones that aren't too bad. So the male we've got is actually pretty good. I've bought all of these with cash, I would add, because we're very cash rich and we're very poor on conservation credits, so I want to save those. Our penguins, I would add, are really starting to make quite a lot. We're getting quite a few in here now. So very soon we're going to have hundreds of them. And we're going to get a lot of conservation credits from that. I've just spotted, have we got a talk point soon? Yes, you see our educator is right here. We've got people gathering round for the talk, so this is great news. Yeah, they still can't throw food, so I think it is just the fact that this isn't long enough for him to throw food out onto it for the animals. Okay, so here he goes. He's doing the talk. The guests seem to be enjoying it. He looks happy. Nearly time for the African penguin talk. You can get a good view. That's good. Chief Beef 1 looks busy. Okay, we need to address that. It is a good idea to go around and check some of your guest comments as well. There isn't an ATM? We've got an ATM, haven't we? Have we not put one in? I thought we had. We'll address that very, very soon as well. So you can spot things that you haven't realised through looking at guest thoughts like that. But there we go. Our education is in progress, so that's good news. So let's go ahead and crack on with the habitat. And as with our previous episodes, I will be doing this in a time lapse. I will do some commentary over the top, and then we'll catch up for a little review of what's been done at the end. One thing I do just want to talk about actually here, so we've laid the path out to go round the edge of the habitat like this. Now I'm well aware people could cut through this, so I have made this a width of 8, so it's slightly bigger at the very least. But I do just want to talk about elevated paths because we haven't touched on this. So with elevated sections, so I have just hit U twice to elevate this up like this. If we go to elevated length, so this is in the settings option here, you can actually make this a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go down to 2. And when we click there, then we can get a much neater, smaller elevation rather than having those super long spots like that. So I think we'll then bring this back down. I'm not sure on the path type yet, but I will leave it like this for now. And this little elevated section here is going to go up and round and kind of peek into a little cave indoor viewing area for the mandrills. So that's really why I'm doing this here. There are other options in here as well, so curved slopes, this is another good idea. So if I go up U now, you can see we're getting a nice curve out of it. So I do want the little steps here, and I want this to just curve up like that. Then we'll hit J twice, go back to a flat platform. We're just going to keep bending this round like this ultimately until we get to the height that we want. So I'll continue that later on, but I just wanted to talk you through that little trick because we haven't mentioned that yet. So it's super useful to get nicer, smoother little kind of sections of stairs if you want to with this elevated length tool here. So with this section, what I wanted to do is create a really layered habitat with lots of layers going down to the front where the guests can view from, and then also up to this back bit where there'll be a little shack for the mandrills. And there's a number of ways you could have done this. I could have shaped the terrain before putting in the paths, so the paths on the ground, but actually I think for beginners this is probably an easier way because paths can be finicky beasts. So I have just lifted up the terrain to the height of the viewing platform and then just shaping it around that, and we'll fill in any gaps up to the viewing platform with construction pieces that the animals can still stand on. Well, you can see me here with the staff path. What I'm trying to do is create a little bit of a back cave entrance with the staff path. So in the settings, I'm using the flatten terrain and the tunnel function here to try and tunnel it through the terrain, although my terrain wasn't actually high enough, so that's why I'm pulling it across afterwards and shaping out the cave sort of entrance after I put in the gate. But have a play with those functions as well. We'll talk about the tunnel function certainly a little bit more later on in the series. then for our water-based barrier, I'm just using the terrain stamp tool here and making sure that it is 3 meters wide at least. The minimum you can do is 4 actually. So what I'm trying to do is tuck it up really close as I can get to the path. So you'll see some of the block is red, as in it won't shape the terrain because the path is there. But that's not a problem for me because it is wider than we actually need anyway, and we can always do some terraforming afterwards to make sure that they can't jump across. And you'll see me a lot getting rid of the long grass to make it short grass, just because when I'm doing a habitat like this where I've got lots of terrain shaping, it's much easier to see the different layers in the terrain if you've got short grass there. There what I was doing is just checking they couldn't escape across the water barrier front of it, that it was deep and wide enough for them. I knew that they could escape from the back. And with water you can select different types, so like if you want dirty water or Amazonian style dirty water, you can choose those from the menu just like I'm doing here. So now we're going to start building out the shack, which will house the sort of bedding area, indoor living area for the mandrills here. And this took me quite a long time to get right because I had an idea of exactly what I wanted in my head, but the roof and things like that didn't fit. The walls weren't quite the right height when I started putting it together. So building can take a little while to get what you want, but you just got to keep at it. But I really like the bamboo pieces that I'm using here because they are paintable, so you can make them whatever colour you want. And you'll see me as well putting in little kind of gaps into the wall because there's different interesting wall sections that also come with this set as well. A really handy one to have. And then just to make the walls slightly more interesting and make it look a little bit more shack-like, a little bit more run down, I decided to add in these corrugated iron pieces and a couple of wooden planks here. And just to finish them off as well, you'll see I use the bracket piece to kind of sink it into the wall to make it look like nails on it, which I think just adds a little bit of extra realism to it rather than just having the corrugated iron plastered on the front of it. I wanted this habitat to feel really rainforesty, so I decided to add in a couple of waterfalls, and I am using the waterfalls that came with the aquatic pack here, which is sort of ready-made, but there are other waterfall effects that you can add to your own terrain, which give a similar vibe, but I think sometimes as a beginner it's easier to use these pieces and just plop them in rather than having to mess around with the effects, although they are pretty easy to use. You just need to look out for a top, middle and bottom to your waterfall and then place them in the right angles and how you want them to get the right effect. And of course these waterfalls are also colourable, so I just changed them a little bit to make the water colour look a little bit more dirty to match the dirty water that we've got at the bottom, and again make it feel a little bit more natural rainforest style vibe. Now the key thing to note about rocks here is I am using temperate rocks because my map is a temperate theme. And the reason for that is, you'll see I use a lot of terrain painter to paint in the rocky terrain surface around them, and because I'm using the same temperate rocks as the theme, it all blends in really, really nicely. So if you're mixing rocks into very heavily landscaped terrain, then this is a great little trick. Just make sure you use your map theme style rocks and it will blend in really perfectly. So what I am trying to do here is create lots of layers in my habitat as mentioned, so I want it to be kind of little pathways running alongst these flat bits. Obviously our keeper needs to get around the habitat to make sure it's clean, but then these rocky kind of cliff edge areas to show the different layers of height as the habitat climbs upwards. And I think this gives a really nice view and effect for the guests down at the bottom as well, because they can look down as well as up and across through the habitat to see all of the mandrills. So once I got in all the main rocks that I wanted to have placed, I decided to go onto the terrain surface. Now the mandrills needed a lot more soil than we had here. So I think the biggest trick with this is lower the intensity down on your brush for your terrain painting and then mix in lots of different types, particularly for this sort of rainforest effect that I wanted to get here. I wanted it quite muddy, but I did want a little bit of the green showing through to add to the foliage that we'd be putting around the habitat later on. So just using it at a lower intensity helps you to really blend those different textures together. And I think using the heavy soil and the lighter soil as well mixed in gives a really nice natural look to it. Now the mandrills need quite a lot of climbing space, so I did actually opt in this case to use the base game blueprint climbing frames because I'm going to be adding vines that you will see later on and trees as well that they can climb, so there's tons and tons of climbable elements within this, and I didn't want it to be dominated by really obvious climbing frames in this sense, so I've just used some of the smaller blueprints just to add a couple of little areas and make sure that their needs are fulfilled without kind of taking ages building a bespoke custom climbing frame to fit the area, because I really want the trees to dominate this habitat. And a really nice trick with the flat climbable platforms as well is to sink them into the terrain so they look kind of like a little bit more like overgrown and like they're blended in. And you'll see me do this as well in this habitat again, which I think kind of adds to the sort of rainforest effect here. And even though they're on the ground, it will still count as climbable elements for the animals. Now the one thing to be aware of with the enrichment items is some of them will completely flatten out your terrain, so you'll see me here trying and experimenting with a few different placements until I find the right ones, but you will need to remember to leave certain areas in your habitat which are pretty flat to add in, particularly the food enrichment items. So now we're going to go ahead and add in the foliage, obviously remembering to keep it to Africa and a tropical biome so that it is suitable for the mandrills and it will make sure that their happiness is as good as it possibly can be. And they have 51% coverage tolerance, so I'm literally going to max this out in this to get our rainforest vibe effect. So starting off with the bigger trees is usually what I do here to get the placement in, and then going around and doing more ground foliage and smaller bushes afterwards. I find that an easier way to visualise the whole habitat. You've got to keep in mind the eyeline view from guests as well. Now I've obviously gone around and tried to place enrichment items around the edge so that the mandrills are attracted to areas that the guests can easily see them. But I do want to make sure I'm not clustering lots of foliage in one place, which is going to block the view for guests. You'll see me moving my camera around constantly to try and check different viewing angles. Maybe difficult to watch, but you can watch this on slower speed as well if you would like to, and then you can see more of exactly what I'm doing in each stage. Okay, so really annoyingly, and it's after midnight here in the UK, and I've been up trying to figure this out for hours, but my footage seemed to be corrupted for the rest of my detailing time lapse, so I'm really truly sorry to everybody. You've probably seen a frame rate drop at the end there. It was absolutely fine when I was playing planetzoo, so something's obviously gone wrong in my recording, which is just so frustrating. But unfortunately these things do happen. So I have lost the rest of the detailing time lapse, but just to talk through, I guess, some of the brief overview points that I wanted to mention. I've used lots of vines in here as different climbing elements, so that was one thing I was going to talk about. I also talked a little bit about how I designed these rock cliff faces with the use of the vines in there and also the bushes in between the cracks in the rocks, which I think helps to give it a kind of rainforest overgrown vibe. And that's really what I was going for with that. And then in terms of the guest barrier as well, how I did that was piece it in individual sections. So I just used a very small 2-meter section with panels of the breeze blocks and a concrete panel for the flooring. And that was just to cover up the gap between the edge of the terrain and the edge of the path there. And then using the X function, I aligned everything up so that I could make sure I could just literally copy and paste this whole 2-meter segment of it and just copy it all the way around the edge of the path, filling in any little gaps in the concrete platform extending out to the path with an extra panel in there. And I will talk through that in a future episode, because yeah, that was a technique that I was trying to focus on with the end of the detailing time lapse, but it is what it is. Anyway, I'll skip forward through to the review. So there we go, we have got our Mandrill falls in, and yeah, I'm really liking actually how when guests look here, they can look right down but also up through the habitat and kind of get long sight lines all the way through. And I really like the fact that actually you kind of have to walk all the way around this habitat to really appreciate it, to get all the best views. So like if I was a guest in this suit, I'd be walking all the way around. And I've tried to put enrichment items kind of pretty much all the way around it, so the mandrills will be encouraged to go to each section. And guests should get good views no matter where they are standing. Of course, we put in our education point over here with the seating area as well, because I thought they'd probably get a decent enough view from back here, particularly if the mandrills are there. And actually, this education point does say that it can throw food in, assuming it will go down to this little section here, or else he's got a really good arm, our educator. But yeah, the mandrills seem to be enjoying it, certainly. And I'm just, really enjoying this kind of fall in height and these fall in layers. And the waterfalls as well. I did consider making this into a falling waterfall, so putting one more kind of slightly further back behind this one. But actually, I don't think we needed it in the end, so I'm quite happy with how that has come out. And I do like the tunnel access as well, with the little drinking water pipe behind. This has come out quite nicely if we come through here. Kind of hiding it in the rocks in this little archway has worked really well. Again, a bit more detailing needed on these little mountains around the back of these rocks here. I haven't gone as far as to do that because this has taken an awfully long time. And yeah, our barriers need repairing, but I do like this view from the shed as well. The mandrills are using this quite nicely here too. We actually got 3 in here, hiding away in here. So we could even potentially put a little webcam for people down the bottom to see. But I think it fits in pretty well and blends into the rocks quite nicely for the walk up here and down this slope. Back down into our sign, our Mandrill Falls sign. And I did try to give it that really rainforesty kind of overgrown effect, which is what I wanted, but still within their limits. So I don't want 100% foliage. I think they're only at about 50%, and I've really maxed that out with this. So I couldn't put in any more foliage without making them a little bit unhappy. Of course, like with the penguins, we can go over it a little bit, but I think this was enough to give us that sort of rainforest overgrown effect. Yeah, pleased with how this has come out. And all of our female mandrills are expecting babies, so we're going to have a lot of them. So please let me know in the comments, as always, your name suggestions for these mandrills, and we'll give them names on the next episode. And you won't have seen me as well do this little bit of path detailing because it is exactly what we've done throughout this whole area. We're keeping the theme very consistent. And this area here I have left blank because we'll be coming to do something with that either next episode or the episode after. So very soon indeed. So for today, that is going to be it. But if you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are as always really appreciated and help me to grow as a channel and get more people noticing the planetzoo content here. And as mentioned, do let me know those name suggestions in the comments. But that is all from me for now. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye!